I turned 100 this spring. 100 years of waking up to sunlight that never once rushed me, never once begged me to hurry, never once promised me that tomorrow would be easier than today. And if you have come here hoping that I will hand you a miracle, a capsule, a secret formula, a rare powder from some distant mountain, then you will be disappointed before I even finish this sentence. Because the truth that kept me alive this long is not dramatic. It does not glitter. It does not arrive in a bottle with a golden label. Longevity, my dear, is not swallowed. It is practiced. I learned that lesson early, long before people began chasing youth like it was a train leaving the station. I grew up in a small house where mornings began with movement, not motivation. We did not speak about fitness. We simply carried water, swept floors, walked to the fields, stood for hours preparing meals. Our bodies were not sculpted by intention, but shaped by necessity. And without knowing it, we were laying down the first quiet bricks of a long life. You must understand something. The body does not negotiate with grand gestures. It responds to repetition. One walk does not make you strong. One good night of sleep does not make you resilient. One healthy meal does not undo years of neglect. Life extends itself not through heroic efforts, but through ordinary loyalty to simple routines. Day after day, season after season, year after year. That is how time begins to trust you. When I was in my 40s, I watched friends begin their search for shortcuts. New tonics appeared. Promises grew louder. Advertisements spoke in the language of urgency. Reverse aging, boost vitality, defy decline. I remember standing in a pharmacy once, holding a small glass bottle that claimed to restore youth. It cost more than a week of groceries. I put it back on the shelf and walked home instead. That walk, I often think, may have given me more years than anything inside that bottle ever could, because walking became my prayer. Not the kind spoken with words, but the kind spoken with footsteps. Every morning, I stepped outside and let the rhythm of my body remind me that I was still part of this earth. The sun on my face regulated more than my mood. It regulated my sense of belonging. The steady swing of my arms loosened worries that would otherwise harden into illness. Movement was not punishment, it was conversation. Over time, I began to see longevity as a form of quiet investment. Each habit was a small coin placed into a jar no one else could see. Drinking water instead of sweet comfort, going to bed before exhaustion became collapse, sitting with friends and laughing until our lungs ached, eating food that came from soil, not factories. None of it felt revolutionary, yet together these choices accumulated like interest. And now, at 100, I can tell you this with complete certainty. The years did not arrive because I chased them. They arrived because I built a life sturdy enough to hold them. If you truly want to understand how a long life is built, you must stop looking for moments of transformation and begin studying patterns of devotion. Longevity does not appear suddenly like lightning across a summer sky. It grows slowly like the rings inside a tree, silent evidence of seasons endured with consistency rather than drama. I did not wake up one day and decide to live to 100. I simply decided again and again to live well enough to deserve tomorrow. My mornings became the anchor of everything. I learned that how you begin the day is a quiet negotiation with your future. I would wake before the noise of the world gathered its strength, not out of discipline alone, but because I came to cherish the gentleness of those early hours. I would open the window and let fresh air replace the stale breath of sleep. I would stretch my arms toward the ceiling like branches remembering the sun. My joints would creak, yes, but they would also soften, like old hinges grateful to be used. Then I would step outside, always outside, even when the sky was gray, even when the wind felt like it had something personal against me, especially then. You see, movement is not only about muscles and circulation. It is about reminding your spirit that it still belongs to the rhythm of the world. I walked on uneven paths, over damp grass, along roads that had no sidewalks and no promises of comfort. I walked when I was tired. I walked when I was joyful. I walked when I did not feel like walking at all. And in that steady repetition, my body learned trust. People often ask me, "What was your exercise routine?" They expect charts, schedules, strategies. I tell them this: my routine was participation. I participated in life physically. I carried groceries instead of ordering them. I climbed stairs instead of waiting for elevators. I knelt in gardens and stood in kitchens and reached for high shelves. I treated my body like a companion, not a machine that only deserved attention when it malfunctioned. Over decades, this companionship turned into resilience. Food, too, was never a battlefield for me. I did not count calories like they were enemies hiding in the shadows. I paid attention instead. I noticed how certain meals made my energy feel like a steady candle, while others burned like fireworks and left nothing but smoke. I learned to eat what the earth recognized: grains that still remembered wind, vegetables that still carried the taste of rain, fruits that felt like small celebrations in the palm of my hand. I ate slowly. I chewed with gratitude. Digestion, I discovered, begins in the mind long before it reaches the stomach. There was a season in my 60s when the world around me became obsessed with pills. Suddenly, every conversation sounded like a prescription. Take this for your bones. Take that for your memory. Take another for your mood. I'm not foolish. Medicine has saved countless lives, and I respect its place. But I also saw people begin to outsource their responsibility to tiny tablets. They swallowed hope in doses while continuing to live in ways that quietly undermined them. They slept too little, worried too much, moved too rarely, yet expected chemistry to compensate for neglect. I chose a different path, not a rebellious one, simply a conscious one. I asked myself each evening, what did I do today that my future self will thank me for? Some days the answer was grand: a long walk beneath golden trees, a meal cooked with fresh herbs, laughter shared across a crowded table. Other days the answer was humble: drinking enough water, turning off the radio to sit in silence, forgiving someone who had no idea they needed forgiving. Longevity, I realized, is not built only through physical habits. It is shaped by emotional hygiene as well. Stress, my dear, is a quiet sculptor. It chisels away at you while you are busy pretending to be strong. In my younger years, I wore worry like a badge of honor. I thought endurance meant tension. It took me decades to understand that the nervous system also requires routine gentleness. So I created small rituals of calm. I would sit on the porch in the late afternoon and watch shadows grow longer. I would listen to birds arguing about nothing important. I would breathe slowly enough to feel my heartbeat settle into something like peace. Sleep became sacred. Not the indulgent sleep of escape, but the restorative sleep of trust. I stopped treating bedtime as the leftover hour of the day. Instead, I treated it as the foundation of tomorrow. I dimmed lights. I softened my thoughts. I allowed fatigue to arrive naturally rather than forcing myself into exhaustion. Over time, my nights became quieter, and my mornings began to greet me like an old friend rather than an obligation. Relationships, too, formed part of this invisible architecture. I noticed that the longest lived people around me were rarely the most ambitious or the most celebrated. They were the most connected. They had someone to share bread with, someone to argue with kindly, someone to sit beside in comfortable silence. Loneliness ages a person faster than any disease I have ever witnessed. So I invested in companionship the way others invested in stocks. I wrote letters. I made phone calls. I showed up for birthdays and funerals and ordinary afternoons that seemed insignificant at the time. If you are searching for a secret, this is as close as I can bring you. Longevity is not an achievement you unlock at the end of a difficult level. It is a byproduct of daily loyalty to simple truths. Drink water, move your limbs, rest your mind, nourish your body, protect your peace, repeat tomorrow, and then repeat again. Years will begin to gather around you like leaves, and one day you will look back, astonished not by how hard it was, but by how quietly it happened. By the time I reached my 70s, I began to notice something remarkable. The habits I had practiced for decades no longer felt like effort. They felt like identity. I was not someone who forced herself to live well. I was simply someone who lived that way. And this, I believe, is where many people misunderstand the journey of longevity. They treat healthy living as a temporary project, something to endure until results appear. But a long life is not the reward for a short period of discipline. It is the natural outcome of becoming the kind of person who repeats life-giving behaviors without constant negotiation. Think of it like tending a garden. You do not water a plant intensely for 1 week and then abandon it for the rest of the season. You return again and again, sometimes with enthusiasm, sometimes with quiet duty. You remove weeds before they grow stubborn roots. You trust that growth is happening even when the soil looks unchanged. In the same way, I tended to my body and mind with small, faithful gestures. A stretch before standing, a glass of water before coffee, a moment of gratitude before eating. These were not dramatic acts. They were seeds. I also learned to respect the pace of aging instead of fighting it like an enemy. When my knees began to complain, I did not punish them with denial. I adjusted my walks. I shortened my steps. I listened. Adaptation is not surrender. It is intelligence. Many people injure themselves not because they grow older, but because they refuse to grow wiser. Longevity requires humility, the willingness to evolve your routines while preserving their essence. There was a period when the world became fascinated with optimization. Everyone wanted the perfect schedule, the ideal diet, the most efficient way to extend life. I watched this trend with gentle amusement. Life is not a machine to be fine-tuned into immortality. It is a relationship. Some days you will do everything right and still feel tired. Some days you will make imperfect choices and still wake up with surprising strength. The goal is not perfection. The goal is continuity. One of the most powerful practices I developed was learning to recover quickly from disruption. Travel, grief, illness, celebration. These events will interrupt your routines. That is not failure. Failure is believing that one disrupted day erases years of devotion. Whenever my rhythm was broken, I returned to it as simply as possible. I would start again with the next sunrise, the next glass of water, the next step outside. This gentle resilience protected me more than any strict rule ever could. And perhaps the deepest lesson of all was understanding that longevity is emotional as much as it is physical. I forgave more often as I grew older. I let go of arguments that once felt like wars. I learned to sit with uncertainty instead of tightening around it. A peaceful heart conserves energy in ways science is only beginning to measure. Calmness lengthens the breath. Lengthened breath steadies the body. And a steady body becomes a home that time is less eager to leave. So when you ask me how I reached 100, I cannot point to a single triumph. I can only point to thousands of ordinary days in which I chose continuity over convenience. Brick by brick, season by season, I built a life that aging could walk through without destroying. Now I sit by the window in the late light of another quiet afternoon, 100 years carried gently on my shoulders like a well-worn shawl. There is no grand applause for reaching this age. No orchestra rises when you open your eyes in the morning. There is only the simple privilege of another breath, another sunrise, another chance to repeat the small rituals that have kept you here. And I have come to believe that this is the true reward, not the number itself, but the steadiness of the life that allowed the number to arrive. When I look back, I do not remember dramatic turning points as clearly as I remember patterns. The way my feet learned the familiar curves of the road outside my home. The way my hands automatically reached for fresh food instead of packaged comfort. The way my evenings softened into rest instead of dissolving into restless noise. These rhythms became the architecture of my years. They held me together when grief threatened to scatter me. They carried me forward when motivation was nowhere to be found. Many people imagine longevity as something heroic, as if living a long life requires constant strength or extraordinary willpower. But I have learned that it is often the opposite. It requires gentleness, gentleness with your expectations, gentleness with your pace, gentleness with the fragile systems inside you that are always trying to restore balance. The body is not a battlefield to conquer. It is a landscape to care for. And landscapes flourish through patient attention, not sudden conquest. I want you to understand this before you leave me and return to your own busy hours. There will always be a new promise on the horizon, a faster method, a brighter label, a louder voice insisting that time can be tricked or negotiated into submission. Do not be angry at these things. Simply do not be distracted by them. Your life is being shaped quietly each day, whether you notice or not. Every meal, every step, every night of rest, every moment of unnecessary worry, all of it is writing the story your future body will have to live inside. So build that story with care. Choose routines that feel sustainable rather than impressive. Let your mornings begin with movement instead of regret. Let your mind settle before sleep instead of racing toward exhaustion. Protect your friendships as fiercely as others protect their ambitions. Laugh often enough that your lungs remember how to expand fully. And forgive quickly enough that bitterness never finds a permanent room in your heart. If I could place one final sentence in your hands like a small lantern for the road ahead, it would be this. A long life is rarely the result of what you do once. It is almost always the result of what you repeat quietly, faithfully, without applause. The years will gather around those repetitions the way dusk gathers around a glowing window, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize how far the light has carried you.